Good afternoon. The committee of the whole is called back to order, but unfortunately we don't have a quorum. I hope our colleagues will show up soon. I'd like to thank Senator Guåhan, Senator Barnett, and Senator Snickers for being here, and we're just waiting to reach a quorum. Thank you. We're back to recess. Committee holds call back to order. We do have a quorum. We will continue on page 83 and 84 with Senator Barnett. We left off. Senator Barnett, you have the floor. Yeah, we're still in customs and quarantine, page 83 and 84. You were gonna ask a question? Forgot it? Yeah, she can answer it. Yeah, she's the chief.
Mr. Chair, good afternoon to the people of Guam. So just on customs, if you could, because I can't seem to find my notes here, could you just give us the, I think I missed it, the comparisons, the side-by-sides requested last fiscal year versus this one?
So overall, from the 2024, there's a variance of 3.4 million increase, which 1.2 million is attributed to the federal funds, and 2.1 million is from the general fund and special funds.
Are you tracking a negative $899,000 variance in the general funding for personnel?
For personnel, no. Actually, it should be increased because we're funding a cycle.
Okay.
And organic growth.
Thank you. I saw that, and so the cycle is 10 customs and quarantine trainees. Do you have the information about what it was in the last or in this fiscal year?
It should be about the same, I recall, but let me see.
Thank you, Llewellyn. No. Yes, I'll just.
I recall, though, it's about $500,000 for 10 officers.
So that's their usual cycle number of trainees?
Yes.
Okay. So I just generally on the budget, I just hope with the increase and the variance that Customs and the Director, Ike Pareto, are able to do the things they need to do, as many of my colleagues in here might recall when we had the with the Guam and CNMI legislatures. Director Pareto did a presentation and he talked about Customs and Quarantine's role, and of course my area interest was Customs and Quarantine's role relative to protecting our border and stemming the flow of dangerous and illegal drugs into our island. And so I think I had asked Director Pareto how many officers, in a perfect island would he need, and I want to say he talked about the need to double the number of officers they have. So, I mean, if they can only do 10 at a time because they're recruiting, then I guess it is what it is, but I just want to make sure that this budget is going to give Customs the tools they need to continue their drug interdiction, because Director Pareto did also say that they are looking at ways that they can level up that awareness at the Port Authority of Guam, because we're getting it coming in from the post offices, and Customs and Quarantine in conjunction with a lot of great partners have done a great job, as you guys know, in seizing a lot of crystal methamphetamine and even fentanyl that's coming in through the United States Postal Service. But coming from the media and asking Director Pareto and many other people in law enforcement about, if we're seizing, for example, 400 pounds of meth at the post office, why do we still live on an island where it seems like we have 400 million tons of meth out here on the street? And the response that we got was that you ask anybody, and they all believe we need to do a better job of monitoring and enforcement and inspecting down to the Port Authority of Guam as our major port of entry. So I just hope that this budget does that, and if it doesn't, willing to work closely with the oversight chair to do what we can if there's any need for any supplemental funding for another cycle of customs and quarantine trainees, because I know that if you look at the number of customs officers that we have had in years past, there's, I believe, a direct correlation between the decrease in the number of customs officers and the increase in the amount of crystal meth and other illegal drugs that have really run rampant on our island and contributed to the breakdown of the family, the rampant crime, and just the general feeling that our people are not safe on this island. So again, I'd like to see us ramp up the number of customs officers and get to a place where, it's a no-brainer. I think the more customs officers we have, the less drugs we'll see. And I think that's part of why we're seeing a lot of this is we haven't leveled up customs and quarantine to be in a place where even the director says they need to go. So I just hope this budget does that, and I am willing to help at all in any way possible to get to that point where we have a robust customs and quarantine agency that can really fulfill and execute in a better way their mandates relative to our border protection. So, si dus masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Snickers, you'd like to comment on?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank the honorable gentleman previously spoke, Senator Barnett, for offering his kind assistance that we work together to beef up customs. I worked customs when I first joined. I think we got up to about 150 officers, and over the years, it has dwindled. I think previous administrations, I always said it at customs, the quickest way to deregulate is to defund an agency, and I've slowly watched as many of our fine officers leave, including myself. But there are certain things that were mentioned earlier about the service charge that customs. I'm quite weary about that. I wouldn't want to raise any fees, as as business people, they would just normally pass that on to the consumer. So we don't want to be. That's why it's also critical that we also understand what is actually going. So when I left customs at about 2017, normal or regular arrivals came up to about 1.5 million. And during the pandemic, it dwindled so badly where, customs wasn't able to fully fund themselves. So that's probably the reason for the appropriations from the general fund. But we're still in a critical stage according to customs, and the arrivals were 1/3 of what we used to be before the pandemic. So, I literally watched the transfer from the economies from the Japanese market to the Korean market, and that's why we have to always try to maintain our try to have some foresight when we're talking about tourism arrivals. But it's very critical that we properly fund customs, just like as the previous speaker said. I too helped remove probably hundreds of thousands of crystal meth that was entering the island, and it's very critical that we try to get it before it enters the pockets, the minds, and of our citizenry. So it's very critical that we fund it properly, even if we had to take from the general fund to complete the mission. Customs is also experiencing a brain drain, and I travel often and I see the new officers that are there now, and there's a lot of leadership that will be retiring in a couple years, and so we need to make sure that all that is taken care of. But I do support the good work of everyone in law enforcement, including customs. They're the gateway. They're the watchers of the gate, and we need to make sure they're properly funded. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Snickers. Does anyone like to comment on customs, page 83 and 84? Madam Speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, can you just, there's a 1.2 million additional from FY24 in federal grants. What does that allow customs to do, the federal grants? What does that empower them to do?
Mr. Chair, point of information, the Customs uses most of its federal grants for equipment, mostly equipment.
For what? The opium?
What I remember, like X-ray machines and
The equipment.
dogs, agriculture dogs or stuff like that, but
Okay.
mostly most federal grants are applied in that fashion.
All right, thank you. OAB?
The title of the grant is the Port Security Grant. That's the title of the grant.
Okay, so equipment, port security? Who said that? Sorry, Director, did you say?
That was the
Oh.
oversight chair that comment about the main use of the federal grants are mainly geared towards, because of the opium award. Senator Snickers, you may want to repeat the information you provided, Senator?
Yes, sir, gladly. My understanding is most of the federal grants, from experience and also from word from the customs, is that they mostly use that for equipment, purchasing detector dogs and whatnot. Yeah, so it's mostly equipment.
All right, thank you. All right, so they're not using this federal grant increase of 1.2 million for any additional cycles. The only cycle funded in here for FY25 is a cycle of 10, only 10. And according to OFB right now, there was one cycle funded in FY24 for customs, and that was 10 only again. So that's like 20 in 2 years. I believe customs during their budget hearing said that they currently have about 156, only 141 uniformed officers, but their goal is to get 250 by 2027. At this rate, there's no way we're going to get up to 250 with 10 a year, and they did seem, I don't know, it seems to me that it's been consistent all the way around every forum, every event that we're at, where we talk about methamphetamine, that the answer to that is increasing at the borders, interception of these drugs. And in particular, yeah, at the port and at the airport. So I wanted to know if we're increasing the budget, the general fund by 375,000, and the quarantine services fund, well, together you said 2.1 million, but how much of this is allocated, do you know, for like dogs? Because that's another thing that they've said. It's like one of the most effective ways that they've been able to intercept drugs is through the use of the canines.
Again, Senator, whatever they reflected in their staffing pattern, which I believe is 10 new officers for FY25, is basically what we funded the cycle to be. Unlike in the case of Guam Fire and Guam Police, Customs basically supposedly is supposed to be funded out of their fund, their special fund. Their fund is not performing. So that's why, again, the general fund is having to come in and subsidize the shortfall of meeting their operational requirements. So I do take your concern to heart when you say that it's going to take us a while to get up to the potential level of FTEs they want. And doing it 10 here, 10 there, it's not going to expedite that or achieve it in the near future. But again, unless the body is willing to subsidize custom and quarantine for the time being to put on more bodies, then the general fund is just going to have to absorb that cost.
Isn't that what we're doing by putting general fund? We are subsidizing, right? Customs with general fund.
Yeah, we are
So-
subsidizing to keep their operational float at the current
So
level.
you're saying just for current level operations, not for any kind of increased presence at the borders? I am all in favor of, just because, so their Customs Quarantine Inspection Services Fund is decreasing, or had decreased because of the flights, right? Less tourists, less passengers, and so less passenger fees. However, the drugs don't seem to be decreasing at these borders, so I think it is incumbent on us to subsidize more. We are subsidizing already. That's been a decision already made that we need to. We don't want a decreased presence. But can you tell the allocation of dogs in these budgets? Like, have they promised to increase the canines from FY24 to FY25 with the $2.1 million increase in their budget?
We hope, Senator, that, through the allocation we made in the lump sum budget to them, at least on the general fund side, they would commit whatever funds are deemed available or are priority in their spending to meet their program goals. If we wish to increase the number of FTEs, then at this point, we're just going to have to increase their bottom line appropriation in the general fund to do that.
Okay, in their budget, they said that one of their goals was to graduate 9 drug detector dog teams. Is that funded in this? They also said they wanted to deploy 20 additional customs officers for field operations, but we're only funding 10.
Currently in the budget, we've, I believe, put aside about $339,000 for the dog detection program.
Yeah, and how does that
Yes,
compare to
yeah.
FY24?
The overall net for the canine program was reduced by $28,000 simply because we took out the equipment portion that was appropriate for an FY24. Everything else stayed the same.
So if they had been able to use it in 24, they should be able to get additional in 25, or that's just for paying the, I don't know, is it for the canine handlers, their salaries, or does that go for additional training canines and purchasing the canines? I just want to know what change are we expecting from customs in the upcoming year?
Of the 632,000, Senator, that basically is the funding available to them to run the program, which includes personnel and other operational costs.
In current, like continuing?
Yes, whatever their operation is now, we funded the same amount
Yeah.
going into FY25, with the exception of that decrease for equipment that they purchased in 24.
Okay. All right, and then what about how much for rent is this budget going to go for in FY25 versus how much went towards rent during FY24, a particular airport rent?
I believe, Senator, of the total 21.6 million, roughly just over 3 million is allocated for rent.
Is that the same as last year?
Yes, it is.
Or, I mean, well, this year, 24, right?
Yes, over current 24.
Over?
The amount that's we're appropriating in 25 is the same as FY24.
For rent.
Yes.
Okay. Then if we're paying the same rent, we're paying the same K-9s, but we're increasing their budget by 2.1 million, their operations, and we're only getting 10 new customs in the FY25. What else is this 2.1 million going to be covering? Not additional officers, not additional K-9s, and still not any reduction in rent.
Of the increase, Senator, for FY25, 1.5 million is to sustain the new recruits in 24, and 567,000 is to fund the new cycle.
Okay.
That's amounted to 2 million.
All right. Do you know how we are going to get them up to 250, or what did they say their goal was? 250 by 2027. Why aren't we giving them another cycle in FY25? You gave fire, police department, had several cycles in FY24. This one, only one, and now only one for 2025. Only 10, only half of like the police cycle.
Again, Senator, we only funded the 10 because that's all they requested.
But weren't they in their budget hearing saying that they wanted 250 by 2027? They said they want to graduate and deploy 20 additional customs officers in FY25. That was their goal, 20. And 9 drug detector dog teams.
Mr. Chairman, point of information.
Yes, Senator Nicholas?
I just wanted to make it clear that I think the reason why customs is, I mean, they're focusing on that huge number, but they also understand the impact it might have on the general fund, and because of the decrease in tourism arrivals, doesn't allow them for that type of expansion because of the lack of funds being generated from the lack of tourists. Thank you, sir.
Yes, and we also have to all remind ourselves that custom used to not be funded by the general fund, but because of what they generate from the airport. As much as they want 250, realistically, if they had 250, they would have nobody to inspect. They'd have a bunch of folks with nothing to inspect. So that's why they're pacing it by asking for 10 at a time. You just have to picture that, folks.
So are we saying that we, despite them saying they need 250, are saying that they need less because there are less visitors? I don't agree, because they're saying, I hope, that they need 250 in order to protect our community. Despite the number of visitors, they need to inspect more. We're nowhere near even, 100% inspection at any of these ports. And I don't even think we have a small percentage.
Understood, Speaker, but if that's what they request for, then that's why we're honoring that. We can have a different perception of what we should get them to be at, but if they're only asking for 10, then we're going to work with the 10. And if they ask later on, they say, can we do 20 because we have...
I know, so let's say
work it.
They think they can't ask for more because they've been given a budget ceiling. However, we know that if we don't pay for it up front, where we can intercept the drugs coming in, that we are going to pay for it in the back. And then if we're not going to pay for it, such as in behavioral health, drug addiction programs, we're not going to pay for it in other places that it's only our community that is paying for it with their lives and with their health and safety. So I don't know, but for me, I feel like I would like to, I want our budget to show our priorities, and it should be showing here that if Customs needs 250 and our passengers cannot support that, then we should support it in another way. That was a choice made by legislatures long ago. We'll support them with passenger fees, but passenger fees might, you know, make sense for arrivals at the airport. It doesn't make sense when we have to deploy them to the marina, we have to deploy them to the Port Authority of Guam. There are no passengers fees for any of those areas, and they have other fees, but still, we need to stop the drugs. So I just feel that we need to prioritize that. And they've asked for 250 by 227. They've asked for 20 in this fiscal year. We've only funded 10. Can I ask, so one of the laws that was passed in the recent recently was that we're going to give them, or they were authorized to use a new electronic type of system that was going to be able to help them track better and I don't know, categorize better so that they would be able to choose better which cargo or passengers they would inspect. Has that system been funded? It's not funded in the budget, but is it funded anywhere else that you know of? Or is that still?
In my conversation with the chief, Pareto, in our office about a month ago, they are in the process of doing exactly what you're suggesting about coming up and developing a program where they can track, especially the importation of goods coming into the ports. Right now, they're saying that especially adjusting their fees could generate more funds for the program. But right now, they're trying to do a couple of things that going on at the same time. Was to adjust the fee schedule. They promised that sometimes, but in the next couple of months, they would propose a fee schedule. And I even told them, if you want to submit it to us for appropriations, we can do that. We can spearhead that or give it to the appropriate committee chair. Two is to develop the program to account for more revenues where right now there's a leakage in how we're not collecting these fees and these fines. And I think it's just a systematic thing. And once they get this program up and running, they'll be a little bit more efficient and effective in collecting and maybe actually doing the work, which may even probably result in not so much getting up to that 200 and some FTE position, but at least be a little bit more effective in how they operate, how they do their operations. But again, you know, the only reason why we funded for 10 positions is because that's all that the agency requested. And it was also, the chief also expressed to us, and he's very cognizant about, you know, the fund not collecting as he used to do prior to 2019. But he also was saying that, you know, Steve, we know exactly, we would like more positions, but we're not going to ask for the sky. And although we want to see an X amount of people on board by a certain year, we'll take it as we go forward and try to do the best we can with what we have. That was his comment to me.
Well, if they wanted 20 and they're only getting 10, then I feel like that's on us. 20 in FY25, 20 in FY26, and 20 in FY27 would bring them to 60. They want 100 more, right? By then, it's still short. 10 by 10 is even shorter. It's $500,000 for 10 more. I'm hoping, Mr. Chair, that with OFB's help, we can find this money as well for custom $500,000. Force them to do another cycle if you're saying it's because they're not requesting. It's very hard to believe that when they're very clear in their budget request, they want 20 more. They want 20 new. They expect 20-plus officers who have, no, they said about 40 to 50% of agency officers and civilian staff have over 20 years and are looking at retirement. That would be a big loss. And bringing in only 10 more, it's not going to be able to even replace those if that's the case. All right, so the electronic system is, you're saying they're going to fund that some other way. They're going to fund it little by little through increasing their fees for inspection?
According to Chief Guerrero, they're going to revamp their whole entire fee schedule and see whether or not, his concern is the timing. Is this the proper time to address a fee schedule?
Of course, it's probably not a
Yes.
proper time to do a huge fee increase. You're going to get protests at the port, you're going to get protests at the marina, you get protests everywhere. The problem is, it is a proper time to implement whatever they believe is going to help us get meth to stop coming into Guam. And we need to shore that up. It's us. We need to give them whatever it takes, the dogs, the canines, the officers, the new recruits, and this electronic system, if that is what they promise will help us to stop the drugs. And it doesn't seem like we are doing that. We're doing kind of status quo without much increase, except for one cycle of 10. I know my time's up, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? If not, we will close now Customs and Quarantine Agency. Now proceed to page 85, Department of Chamorro Affairs. Does anyone like to speak on Department of Chamorro Affairs? I see no hands. Pretty much. It's closed. We are now on page 86, Department of Military Affairs. Does anyone like to speak on this? Senator Barnett?
Mr. Guerrero, could we just get the comparisons, please?
It's a plus 256,000, just to let you know.
Yes, Senator, there is a 56,000 increase, which comprises of 143,000 increase in the federal grants, and then the local side was 115 plus on the general fund side.
Are you able to tell us how much their staffing has grown in the fiscal year compared to the last one?
One more time?
Staffing, how much staff, they increased
increased it?
staff, yeah? It's like, somebody told me they're doing a lot of hiring.
I believe based on their staffing pattern, they're asking for one additional FTE.
How about any staff hired with the ARP, would that reflect there?
Nothing.
Okay. Si dos más, sí.
All right. I don't see any other hand. Page 86 is closed. We're now on page 87, Guam Council on Arts and Humanities Agency, CAHA. Anyone would like to speak on page 87, CAHA? Yes? Was it? Okay, the increase there is 274,000 increase. And OB can identify where the 274 increase is at. Senator Tideway?
Yes, on CAHA?
Yes, they're going to break down what the 274,000 increase
Okay,
is.
and while they're doing that, can they also explain in FY24, there was no federal funds that was given to CAHA in FY24. However, now they have, under, it says federal side, they have 42,300. Can you explain how this came about?
Are you referring to the part here where it says federal matching grants?
No, I'm not. I'm looking directly at,
The spreadsheet, right?
yeah, the spreadsheet, and it'll take you to, oh, sorry, I'm on GFD right now, trying to be ahead of the game here. But there's a section in there where it says federal, under the, not special funds, but under federal, under the gray area, and it shows 42,300, but last budget, FY24, it wasn't in there, and now we're seeing it here. Is there a reason why there was a change? Let me go back to CAHA. What number is CAHA, Joe? The
445.
Thank you.
Are we on the same line?
Yeah. 445. Yes, I see CAHA. Okay, yes. So if you go to the section toward the end where it's showing there's an increase under total federal, it's showing 42,300. And my question is, you know, that wasn't in FY24. And so where did this come from?
OB will answer that. They probably got lucky and finally got a grant. But
Okay.
we have OB answer that.
Because, you know, whenever we see there's an increase, you know,
Yes.
you're incorporating federal funds too sometimes, I noticed in the spreadsheet. So
Yeah.
just like the last time where,
It's just identifying where it's going, that's all. Federal grants, if
oh,
OB
okay,
can
it's
answer that.
identifying it? No, it's showing, if you tally it up on
Right.
the increase, it tallies it up. the
That's correct.
42, yeah.
You're right.
So the question is, they received it this year, but they didn't receive anything in FY24. So I was just wondering what the difference, why this year, not last year?
Senator, if you're referring to the 333 under, that's for FY24. If you look at the column of FY25, it went up to the, what is the number?
Yeah.
So they did have federal, and it was an increase of 43.
It was an increase of 40, no, this,
Their federal funds increased, roughly 42,000.
okay, because I'm
Over
looking
20
at your FY24, right? I mean, yeah, FY24, and I'm not seeing,
Yeah, you'll see that it'll say like 300 and
we're at CAHA, right?
right, where it counts.
Okay, number, so we're going through. I don't
My
see
staff
anything in
is
federal.
heading to you, Senator Tideway.
Yes, sir.
We'll just take a quick moment of,
Okay.
so
I'll
you
bring
can
it here.
see it, it's right there.
Here, Joe. See, look at this one here. So if you look at CAHA, right? And then 447, okay, right.
All right.
Thank you,
Senator?
Mr. Chair.
All
Yeah,
right, thank you.
my question has been answered.
All
I
right.
have no further
Anyone
questions.
else have any questions for the Guam Council on Arts on page 87? If not, Madam Speaker?
What's the 274,000 increase for? I mean, this is more than what DICIT needed, I think.
Okay, the 200, first, out of the 274, I think there's an increase in federal matching, so OEB will answer for the additional 200,000.
No, it's general fund.
Okay, on the general fund, it was 231. Total was 274. 231, you're correct, but total would be 274. So they're going to identify where the 231's at. They're looking it up right now.
The increase, Senator, is in the categories of personnel, I believe, and office rental.
I guess, so increase in personnel?
Personnel, contractual, and I believe, no, office space. It's personnel, contractual, and office lease.
All right, now, I'm just trying to make sense of this, Mr. Chair. I love CAHA. I want them to succeed. I think they do good work to support our artists. My issue is just that on almost every one of these executive branch budgets, we see like about $250,000 increases. That's for some of them. For the others, flat, nothing. And you know, yesterday we're trying to get money for DICIT. It's really just all within this amount, 250 or less. And I guess I'm just trying to make sense of how are we prioritizing here? How did these come about where some get these increases in personnel, able to hire more, and some don't? And I guess when I've asked, you've said, like, for example, Customs can only hire 10, but the fire department and the police department are able to do multiple, like maybe 2 or 3 times that amount at DOC, which all good for them. I don't want to take it away from them, but I'm just saying, how are we saying some are worthy and some are not? That's what's bothering me. Additional personnel at DICIT would give us more in-home care services for people with disabilities. The additional funding behavioral health would have given them more beds in detox centers. So
Understood all of that, ma'am, but at the same token, as a former police officer, more people would rather work at the fire department because they get paid more.
say that,
Straight up.
Say that again?
More folks, as a former police officer, a lot of the folks would like to work at the fire department because they get paid more. And on a lot of other agencies, you're not going to see a line of people lining up in the other agencies. That's just a matter of fact.
Well, I think we should be funding based on the need of our community, not
Understood.
based on what's popular.
Understood, but you just need to understand that part first, because what's not popular is one thing. And I understand where you're coming from for DICIT and all that. I agree with you on the other agencies. But when we start comparing it with law enforcement,
No, I'm comparing it with CAHA here. This is a $250,000 increase versus.
I understand where you come from, ma'am, but I'm just trying to make it clear. When you identify other agencies, I want to make it
Yes.
very clear, okay? That's all.
So,
we're good with that.
Yeah, it seems like, I'm not sure the formula we're using for these agencies. So GPD, we went through that already. We talked about how many cycles they're going to get, but how come they're getting 25 per cycle and Customs is only getting 10? Right?
Yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. And maybe OFB can answer to that issue of CAHA.
Again, when we go through these budgets, every department is submitting a budget based on their needs. We review the budgets and do the best we can to determine whether these needs are valid and whether or not we can substantiate it. We try to do our best to, quote, be part of the prioritizing list of which we feel is important and what programs to fund in government. But we cannot fund up to what the departments are requesting, because that would be way beyond our means. So we need to do the best on how we pick and choose how we fund these programs. And in this particular case, what the departments were requesting, we gave it to you. It's almost like a slight increase only because of the office rent, which is a fixed cost, contractual, which is a fixed cost, and then you got personnel. I believe they were asking for 1 or 2 more positions, which constitutes a $100,000 increase in personnel. but it's at the department's request. We're not giving anything more than what the department is asking for.
Okay, I accept that, and I'm not going to challenge this budget for CAHA. My problem is just that also these other agencies request it. That's the point I'm making. That just doesn't seem correct. But thank you.
Senator Barnett, are you done, Madam Speaker? And we're going to move along. Senator Barnett, do you have any questions for CAHA?
Sí, just Mr. Chair, and thank you to Mr. Guerrero for the explanation. So your explanation is basically agencies come to you, they tell you what you need, and then you kind of decide which of those needs you want to meet, which of those needs you don't want to meet?
True justification, yes.
So I thank you as well for that explanation. I think that's where we come in and, you know, as elected representatives of the people, make those tough decisions where, you know, I agree with the speaker. And we haven't seen an increase in the CAHA budget, you know, so I know over there at CAHA, they're probably like, oh, wow, what a nice increase at $230,000. But I mean, when we're comparing the needs of CAHA versus the needs of DISID and the need for the job coaches, I don't even think that's a tough decision. I think that, you know, I mean, I would support any amendment that would move this money to where it might be needed a little more. I'm not saying it's not needed at CAHA. Love the arts, support the arts. But it really is. I mean, if it's going to come down to we're going to fund job coaches to assist persons with disabilities so that they can get out and do the things that they haven't been able to do. And, you know, we run into so many persons with disabilities who are in great need of this job coach program. I would support it, even if it meant taking out a big chunk from an agency I have oversight of. So, Sidos Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment for CAHA? There being none, CAHA is closed. We are now at the Guam Fire Department, page 88, and I have Senator Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's that?
You want me to give you the increase, the difference? Okay.
Sure.
It's approximately based on 2024 and 2025 is a $3,437,000 increase. Okay? Now you can move on with your questions, whatever you may have, and OEB will provide you an answer.
Okay, so the GFD executive budget request was $43.4 million, but OFB here has them at $41.7 million, about $1.7 million less than the executive budget request. What accounts for this difference?
The variance, Senator, is a result of the adjustment in the retirement rate and the funding of only half of the cycle for FY2025. I mean the vacancies, not the cycle, I'm sorry, the vacancies.
Okay. And that it's roughly around 900,000 for a reduction because you're paying out less in retirements. Is that, do I understand that correctly?
That's correct. There was an adjustment in the retirement rate.
That was figured out by actuarials. Do I understand that correct?
I believe the amount that was reflected in the executive budget in their budget call was based, I think, on a 32.35%. The actual actuarial rate that came out was 30.77%. So you show a variance of 1.58%. difference in the actual requirement for retirement in the department's budgets.
Okay. And my other question is, why did you remove the other fire cycle? My understanding from the chief is that there are candidates that are already certified and they're looking to begin hiring at the beginning of the fiscal year. And just to remind my colleagues, we expect half of our current firefighters to retire in the next 10 years. And so it's not enough to have the one cycle. We need 2 cycles because one cycle just treads water. 2 cycles actually helps us plug the holes. So, I guess that is my question. Like, why did you guys remove that cycle?
Okay, just for clarification, Senator, we didn't remove any cycle. What we did was clarify when the new cycle was supposed to begin in FY2025. The way they budgeted in their budget was assuming the cycle was starting October 1st of 2024. I got confirmation from the department that the cycle won't start until March of 2025. So that's 6 months of salary, basically, that was embedded into their budget that, based on salary-wise, was not needed. So that part we removed, but we did fund the cycle for FY2025 moving forward from the time the cycle starts in March or April.
Mr. Chair, I do have an amendment in Chapter 11 to restore the funding for the additional fire recruit cycle, and I hope my colleagues would support that amendment.
Yes, sir.
I also want to commend OFB for the authorization to use unexpended E911 funds for its intended purpose. This was Bill 138-37, which I introduced last year, and then subsequently included in the Budget Act last year and was carried over this year, which GFD says they do need in order to pay their vendor. So one last question. Does this appropriation level cover the cost of maintenance for our ambulance fleet? I know there's been some concern because quite a few of our ambulances are down for maintenance, and I want to get sure that they are adequately funded for that maintenance.
That's right. For that particular expenditure, Senator, it was not listed down in their budget, but I assume that it would be covered with the lump sum appropriation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Guerrero. With that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone like to speak on Guam Fire Department? There being none? No? No? Yes? Madam
Yeah.
Speaker?
I think the oversight chair did a good job of covering the fire department, and making sure that they're getting what they requested, and including a 20 person cycle. This upcoming fiscal year is already in the budget. He's advocating that they get additional cycle, would be 40 persons in FY2025. I'm looking at the GPD. They're getting a cycle of 20 in FY2025. I think GPD, there's a proposal for additional funding for GPD's trainees in upcoming chapters. And I guess I just want to go back again. So how did we decide GPD 20, Guam Fire 20, but Customs only 10?
If I recall, Senator, or if you can recall back, I
Actually,
think a couple of years.
GFD's
It
proposal
was
is
through a
40.
mandate. Yeah, it was through a mandate. I think that was proper by, back then, Senator Moylan, which stated that for the next 3 years going forward, that these departments would be required to run these cycles every year for the next 3 years. I believe FY25 will be the last of the 3-year period that we would be required to fund the minimum number of positions reflected in that law. And I believe the amount was 20.
All right, so how does Customs end up with only 10?
Again, is that it was at their request that we funded it at 10.
Are you sure? Because they said in their budget hearing they wanted 20 in FY25.
Okay, what we did, Senator, is for the current cycle, we added over a little bit over 500,000 to fund that cycle through its completion. Then we also funded an additional cycle of 10 positions to start in FY25. So again, the 10 positions is the only positions they reflected in their staffing pattern to be hired in FY25.
All right, and what did the GFD reflect in their staffing pattern for FY25?
They reflected 20.
All right, not 40,
No,
just 20.
just 20.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That being said, Senator Barnett, you have questions for the fire department?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just wanted to kind of follow up on the Oversight Chair's questioning on the ambulances. Is there anything in this budget to purchase new ambulances? Anything in here to allow the GFD to purchase new ambulances? I remember I saw a story and they said there was something like half an ambulance servicing the south or.
Nothing is reflected in the FY25 to purchase new ambulances.
But there's money for maintenance.
There's money for maintenance, but I believe that's for the entire fleet of the department.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's no one else on this Guam Fire Department. It's now closed. We'll now proceed to Guam Educational Telecommunication Corporation, PBS. And their increase is a total of 66,000 only. Anyone would like to speak on the PBS? I'm looking, I don't see any hands. Senator Tydegui?
Yes, can you please explain the increase?
The 66,000, OB? The purpose of the 66,000?
And what is this for?
What is it? Is it a
The majority is in the organic growth in personnel and also in utilities, specifically power.
All right. All right. That being said, we are now closed on Guam Educational Telecommunications Corporation. We are now on page 90. Chamorro Land Trust Commission. We have 2 amendments submitted by the Speaker. We'll begin with the first one.
Get the summary on the CLTC first, Mr. Chair.
Okay, the summary for CLTC.
The amount is status quo with that of FY24.
Status quo from FY24. The CLTC request, however, was a little bit more than this, maybe 60,000. Is that right?
Yes, they did, Senator. I believe they were also asking for an additional FTE to fund, but we didn't. We ended up not funding that one.
Okay, so yeah, so this is a little less than that, what they requested for their operations. I appreciate that part of this is coming out of the general fund. As we know, the CLTC has been pretty much stuck on their residential leases due to so many legal problems that surfaced in 2018. And we have been trying to resolve this. Well, they've been trying to resolve it between the board and the Attorney General's office. But there has been changing lawyers, changing directors in the past few years. So I'm hoping that we're getting closer to a resolution with the newest proposal submitted by the Attorney General's office as to how to deal with some of those legal issues so that we can move forward with residential leases. But what they're also facing is well, many issues. But one of them is that when they are processing now those on the waiting list to see, you know, if they're still interested, those who are eligible. They're working with Guam Housing Corporation to expedite the processing of the people on that list. And they are identifying tracts to lease out for residential leases. The problem is that they don't want anymore to lease out tracts of land without infrastructure on it, because we've seen over the years so many tracts of land unused despite leases being issued because there is no water and they can't get approval for water because of other issues. So they want to move forward with planned, I guess, and this was always intended in the Land Trust Act, that these would be planned living areas. So they want to move forward with plans. They have a pilot project up in Jigo that makes available to them at least 166 lots if they can put in sewer and divide those lots up. In order to do that, of course, they need funds to put in the sewer and to do the surveys. The surveys are contingent upon whether we're going to put in sewer or we're going to give them out without sewer, and they're going to be subject to septic tanks. So, of course, the ideal is to put sewer so that they can be divided smaller. And so they have a proposal to fund the sewer and other infrastructure in that area, including sewer, water, power, make that available in this subdivision so that they can issue 166 leases. They would in turn to the eligible beneficiaries issue leases and get from them partial reimbursement for the infrastructure, and that money would go back into the pot so that they can do the same for another tract of land. And they are very much looking forward to this as a new model moving forward. They had hoped that the submerged lands in submerged cables leases would have given them income in order to do this. It has not come to fruition yet. Hopefully soon. We're following up on that. And we just had an oversight on that because we think they're under collecting on the submerged cable leases as well. And of course, they have many other commercial leases to resolve and many other commercial proposals to resolve or to consider. However, they have an opportunity right now, and we passed a law recently to allow them to partner with USDA. And so they have an opportunity to partner with USDA, who, because we are an underserved area, they are hoping they might qualify for even grants from USDA. But in order to start that process, they would require some matching funds for the USDA. So either USDA would fund the infrastructure with matching from Chamorro Land Trust, or the Chamorro Land Trust is going to have to fund it themselves. So I'm proposing, and I'm asking my colleagues to help them to really kick this off finally after many years. And this This was an idea that was proposed many years ago, even before the lawsuit against the land trust. And it was put on hold at that time because of the lawsuit. It's been revigorated now because of their talks with USDA, and because the lawsuit is settled, that they are able to finally move forward. And because they have a council right now engaged in resolving the legal issues in moving forward, with our help, of course, and some other potential bills, that all together, we actually might be able to issue residential leases in FY25. In order to kick them off, I'm proposing, and I'm employing my colleagues to consider this amendment, which is to fund $9 million collected in excess of the adopted revenue levels enumerated in Section 2(1)A of Chapter 1. This should read Chapter 1. As reported in the first quarter Consolidated Revenue Expenditure Report, are hereby appropriated to the Chamorro Land Trust Survey and Infrastructure Fund. That's $9 million in excess of what we are appropriating in this bill. If it comes in, that it goes to the Chamorro Land Trust for this purpose. And if it goes to them early enough, first quarter hopefully, then that would mean our revenue projections were successful, first of all, and it would also mean that they are able to move forward with that cash in the bank and partner with USDA. If USDA rejects them, then they would be able to fund it themselves, working with GWA or private contractors, and really see if this model is going to succeed moving forward. And if it does, then I think it's going to be huge for them. It's going to be huge for all those 8,000 who are on the waiting list to actually see some progress for residential leases. That does not bound them to any other, any other commitments except for this. So I'm asking that this is an investment in those people who are currently without homes, those people who are living in substandard structures, those people who have been waiting and are pretty much getting elderly. If they're not, they're older than I am, because like my age or older, because that's when these waiting lists opened up, 1995. That's when it first passed, and these are the same people on the waiting list since then. And so I'm asking, there's a bill that I had put in for this, but I'm asking if we can get this in this budget based on potential revenues from FY25, that would allow this Chamorro Land Trust to move forward after so many years and finally issue residential lease. So I ask my colleagues for their support of this, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's take a quick recess so we can get some more folks in, so we can get a quorum here. Okay, we got quorum. Okay, we have. No. We need to finish chapter 5. We're almost done. We are now. We have an amendment. Colleagues, notwithstanding any provision of law, $9 million collected in excess of adopted revenue levels enumerated in Section 2(1)A of this chapter is reported in the first quarter Consolidated Revenue Expenditure Report are hereby appropriate to the Chamorro Land Trust Survey and Infrastructure Fund. Are there any objection? I'm not going to ask for anyone to speak on it. Any objection? There being none, you don't need to close. Amendment passes. Madam Speaker, is there anything else you want?
I want to thank my colleagues. I do have one more amendment, just unexpected funds, unexpended appropriated funds to CLTC, that they'd be allowed to use those if they lapse. That's the other amendment, page 90.
Are there any objection to that amendment? There being none, that passes. Are you done with Chamorro Land Trust?
I'm good.
Thank you. I don't see other hands up. Chamorro Land Trust page is closed. We're now on page 91. Guam Regional Transit Authority. Senator Parkinson.
Halfway again. So one of the issues that came up in the pending GRTA case in court was that the board apparently said the former interim executive manager, they were not looking for a permanent executive manager because they did not have the funds. So I just want to confirm the executive manager position is funded in this budget.
Yes, it is, Senator.
Thank you. So typically GRTA gets funds from the highway fund and the public transit fund, which it is not receiving this year. Why is that?
Again, Senator, just remember there's a reduction in the fund revenues because of the gas release tax.
So it's because of the gas tax, the gas relief tax?
Yes, sorry.
So we're subsidizing them with the general fund?
That's correct.
Okay. Is the maintenance of the vehicles funded in this budget?
I will safely say yes, sir, it is.
I recognize that when I look at the comparison with Guam and other locations of similar size, there is a gap of tens of millions of dollars in what they invest into their public transit. And someday I would like to see our public transit be in a similar position with that similar type of investment. But right now we have a lack of executive manager leadership as well as some legal problems that are holding the board from being functional and achieving a quorum. So to that end, I'm not going to be pushing for a greater increase in the mass transit just because I recognize that there is other places in the government that could more readily use that money now. Because even if we were to give it to mass transit, I fear that because of the paralysis in leadership, that money would not go to good use. And so with that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Parkinson. Just to let my colleagues know that there was an increase of $150,000 in Guam Mass Transit. What the increase was, if OMB can answer what that increase was for, $153,000.
The 153,000 basically is the net increase that the department received. Under the general fund, it actually received a $392,000 increase, but they also suffered a $238,000 in their special fund. So the total net increase to the agency is about 153,000. That and the increase. The bulk of it is in personnel, and we have a slight increase in, I believe, in supplies and materials.
Okay. Thank you so much. Anybody else would like to speak on this section of the Guam Regional Mass Transit? Anybody? No other one? We're going to be closing. Okay, no hands up. Closing this one. Okay, going to the next one is Guam Election Commission. The Guam Election Commission was given an additional $190,876. I'm going to have OFB explain where that money was placed.
It's almost the entire 190,000 was under contractual services.
It's all in contractual. Will it be used for the general, will it be used for the general election? Is that why That 190 was incorporated? No, I'm just explaining, Madam Vice Speaker, the increase and where that increase is going to, what it was for.
Yeah, the majority of the increases is all related to the election.
This coming general election, okay.
Yes.
Is there any questions? Anybody have any questions or comments for this section? Seeing none, we're moving forward. Okay. The next page.
Sorry, I was
Oh.
raising my hand earlier.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I didn't see you. Senator Barnett was in the way.
Yeah,
Sorry.
just a question. I know when Director Pangilinan came in, they plan years ahead, right, to ensure that the money is available for the election. So I'm just want to confirm, if OFB can confirm if they've actually calculated or confirmed that from Guam Election Commission to ensure that they're covered, I guess. So this is going to cover for not only this year, but maybe 2 years from now, I believe. Or if you can explain that
Senator,
pattern.
Senator, budgets are only prepared for what's going to be spent within that budget year. I believe after this year, the next election won't be 2 years from now. So in their FY26, they may request for funding for the so they would be budgeting for the primary election. The general election wouldn't be budgeted until the following budget year.
Okay, so this is sufficient, because I know we've come back many times to have supplemental appropriations.
This budget request here is to take care of the general election in FY25, yes.
Okay. Okay, right, thank you.
You're welcome, Senator Paris. Senator Barnett, you're okay? Okay. I'm sorry, I thought it was something you wanted earlier. Okay, so no other questions. We're moving on. We are leaving page 92, Guam Election Commission. Now we are on page, I'm sorry, gavel it? Oh, clear. Okay, my bad. Okay, so Guam Election Commission is done. Page 93 is the Guam Solid Waste Authority. I'll have the increase to the Guam Solid Waste Authority was $2,880,453. I will now have OFB explain why the increase and where that funding went to. The amount of increase was $2,880,453. Increase for this is Guam Solid Waste Authority.
The main reason why the increase is because the actual fund is tracking an additional $2.8 million.
Okay, any questions? Any questions, Senator Paris? Anything? Nothing? Okay. Senator Brown, do you have any questions? I noticed you were...
I just wanted to ask, because when we were looking at legislation that was proposed earlier this year, we were told if we didn't pass it, that the Guam Solid Waste was looking at raising rates to cover their overall costs. Where are we with that? Does this impact any potential rate increases they're going to be providing to customers? Do we know? Have we looked at that?
At the time of our discussion with Guam Solid Waste is I guess a lot of things were happening at the time. The potential, I guess, island-wide mandated collection, all that kind of stuff was supposed to generate enough money to actually cause a reduction in our monthly fee. That didn't materialize. The last I heard is that they're probably looking at maybe a January or February, maybe possible, not rate increase, but I think according to the controller, they are in the process of reviewing to make up for that shortfall they were anticipating for that island-wide island-wide garbage collection. That didn't happen, so for the amount they're requesting now and the increase that they're going to project in FY25, they're saying that hopefully will cover them until such time they deem they need additional funds.
So they're simply saying between now and maybe January, we wouldn't anticipate any increases? That this will cover it with whatever additional revenue they've been able to collect?
They are saying that the amount that we're appropriating in the FY25 hopefully will be sufficient to cover them for the whole year.
Okay, well, we'll be hopeful. We'll just keep our eye on it. But thank you. I appreciate the information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Senator Brown. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on Guam Solid Waste? If there's no more, oh, hold on. Okay.
So I do have some information that I'm.
Senator Paris,
Yeah,
you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, the reason for the island-wide collection was to help fund cell construction. And so because that didn't pass, they are still moving forward with the rate increase or the rate case before the PUC. So this collections, as far as it increasing, so if I can recall, since the pandemic, they've been dropping in their collections kind of dangerously because they have to take out of the reserves to keep afloat and cut as much as they could as far as their expenses. And so they've been very frugal. And so this increase comes at a good time because they have to pay back the bond, the 30 million bond that was used to build the new cell. But then they're always planning ahead. They have to prepare for the next cell. And so they're looking to that rate case to continue moving forward. Yeah, so that's what I have. And they did receive, I believe they're working with the courts in regards to the money that was received, the partial settlement from the ORDOT case. And so that would help reduce the increases to the rates. It was stated at one of the informational hearings that without that, the consumers would have to possibly see almost a doubling of their collections. But because that is coming through, then we're seeing less of the increase happen. So it's mitigating the increase. So the question is, what is reducing the increase is the partial settlement regarding the ORDOT case. So there is, for past cost, but the case is still going on for future cost.
Thank you, Senator Paris. That's very good information, especially for those who are listening regarding that. Anyone else who would like to? Speaker Tulahi, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. So what we're giving them is really their own fund. It's what they have generated based on fees, current payers. And I'm not sure if this is enough to cover their cost for FY25 or it's just showing an increase because they're bringing in more fees. And they told us if we did not pass the bill, which the legislature did, pass the bill for island-wide collection, but it was vetoed by the governor for this island-wide collection of trash, that was vetoed, they would have to increase rates to meet the cost, as the previous speaker said, of the new cell construction and their operations. So I guess I just going to ask, I mean, I think it's a far-fetched, but the settlement helped decrease the rate increase that they have predicted for those who are paying. But is there any way that with this fee structure currently that we will be able to get island-wide collection? Because another reason for that island-wide collection was, it was really the only solution proposed at the time by the Lieutenant Governor and the task force, that all these people had talked about was that was a solution for illegal dumping, was to have this island-wide collection of trash. Is this in any way going to be able to expand their current program to include like additional collections, somewhat like an island-wide collection? Or is this just going to continue existing programs the way they are?
I believe, Senator, what they're requesting is a projected amount that they feel they can achieve in FY25. We're somewhat in agreement with that level, and went ahead and used that level as our projection in FY25.
All right, did they, go ahead.
And between theirs and ours was just slightly higher than they're tracking.
All right, your prediction of revenue that they're bringing in based on fees?
That's correct.
Consumer fees.
Yeah.
All right, but they didn't propose with those existing consumer fees to cover universal trash, right?
No, that's one thing they made perfectly clear. It wasn't.
It was not able,
Yeah.
okay. All right, well, that's unfortunate, but I appreciate the information, and that's unfortunate, Madam Chair. Sizos mas.
You're very welcome, Speaker Tulahi. Anyone else who would like to speak on page 93, the Guam Solid Waste Authority? Anybody else? No? Okay, we are now closing this page. It's closed. We are now moving over to the next page, page 94, Hagatna Restoration and Redevelopment Authority. With this one here, there has been an increase of $34,093. And Steve, can you explain why this was increased and where the money went to, please?
Yeah, the majority of the increase is in personnel and office rent. Yeah, the increase in the office rent was about 11,000. But the majority of the increases was in personnel.
Okay, thank you. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
So the main purpose of this agency is to submit a Hagatna master plan to the legislature, which was submitted a couple years ago and rejected. And we didn't fund it. So what is the point of the agency now? Yeah, what does this agency do? Because, because we talk about the needs of other agencies like DICID. I think this agency is potentially ripe for defunding to give to DICID. So,
on a point of information, Mr. Chair, please.
Yes, Madam Vice.
The Hagatna Restoration was initiated by a lot of our elders who lived in the village of Hagatna. And it was, as we continue to promote Guam and the capital of Hagatna, there was an agency that was formed, and in that authorization, they were to come up with a master plan on how to redevelop and bring up Hagatna to its full potential as the capital. And I want to share with you, Mr. Chair, that though presentations have been done in the past, this agency has done a lot of work, and if you can just give me a moment's recess, I can delineate, if you can just, so I can get my notes out, delineate what this agency was actually created for. But in its
All right,
efforts also
let's
to
take-
promote and advocate.
Let's take a
for
short
Guam.
recess
Yes,
so you can
please.
put some information together. Thank you. Recess this time. May the host call back to order.
Mr.
Madam
Chair.
Vice.
Thank
still
you,
has the
Mr.
floor
Chair.
For information purposes.
Appreciate
Ma'am.
it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And as I stated earlier about the creation of this restoration of Hagatna and its inception of why it was introduced almost 30 years ago. It was to make sure that the planning, the preparation, the development, the construction, the acquisition, lease, disposition, reconstruction, improvement, alteration, extension, repair, maintenance, and operation of the Hagatna Restoration and Redevelopment Project would be done. Mr. Chair, we have, in the past, there have been reports that have been submitted, but the legislature did not approve, so they're continuing to work at the development and the planning report. And again, as we look at Hagatna being our capital city, and it's a place where a lot of history is here in this beautiful village. We look at the preservation, the perpetuation, and promoting of our island, our history, and our culture through this legislation. This is why it was created, and like I said, it's been in existence for almost 30 years, and because the last plan that was submitted to this August body was rejected, they're back at trying to re-update that to make a full presentation to this body. So I thank the good senator from MTM for at least bringing this up, and at least my colleagues have that perspective of the origin and why it was created by a lot of the former village leaders in Hagatna and a lot of the businesses that were here. And again, it's just making sure that the beauty that we have and the history that's in this capital city of our island, which is Hagatna, literally be restored to where a lot of our elders and those are still around. I mean, see where Hagatna should be restored to. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity to at least talk about its inception and why it's still there. There are several employees who have been there a while, and I know that they're working closely with the executive director, Ms. Lola Leon Guerrero, to execute this project moving forward. This was detailed or was reassigned to her. So I know that she's working closely with other government entities to move this project along. Sijos Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice. I'd just like to caution my colleagues, as we even think of anything in reference to any agency that you want to defund or eliminate it, we need to remind ourselves that there are classified employees in these agencies. There's a process of doing this. You don't just defund something and expect it won't disappear. And I just hate for us to end up at civil service figuring out how we bail ourselves out. And with that, I think I'll go back to Senator Parks, and then Senator Barnett will be next.
No, I was speaking, and no, I didn't yield, but there was a point of information. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I got to think that without the master plan, we built all this stuff in Hagatna, the museum, the Congress building, Chamorro Village, etc. All this redevelopment without the master plan. So I got to ask, when do we call it a day and say that this doesn't serve a purpose anymore? It's been 27 years, and we have to figure out if funding this agency is worth it. How many millions have we spent funding this agency for 27 years? So I take what the chairman has said regarding classified employees, and I also understand that there is a commission and a board involved with this Hagatna redevelopment. And so it's not just as simple as defunding them. So, you know, I did have plans potentially to have a budget amendment in Chapter 11 to address and possibly defund this. But I think with the classified employees and the board, I may have to consider doing a bill outside of the budget session to potentially abolish the board so we don't leave abolish the agency so we don't leave a board without any resources and we don't leave these classified employees hanging in the wind improperly. And so I still have my questions and reservations regarding the point of the Hagatna restoration, but I will address my concern outside of the budget process, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. Senator Barnett.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Steve, can you just give us the information about the classified employees that were employed under the Hagatna Restoration and Redevelopment Authority? Because I see the position, it's a program coordinator.
There's a total of 3 classified positions. The title of the position is a Program Coordinator 3, an Administrative Officer, and a Program Coordinator 1. The Program Coordinator 1 basically is a recruitment in progress position.
So it's 2 positions?
2 positions right now.
Okay, so
filled
2
by-
classified employees. And they're classified? Yeah? Usually those.
Based on their staffing pattern, it's showing that there are 2 warm bodies on board right now, with 1 a recruitment in progress.
Classified or unclassified?
I believe these 2 are classified. The executive director position is vacant at the moment, and then the program coordinator is listed here as a classified recruitment
Who
in
is the
progress.
acting executive director right now?
I believe the acting director is Lola Leon Guerrero,
Is she also the
Bureau of Planning and Stats, yes.
director?
Yes.
So she's doing a double?
I think she's doing dual role right now.
I see. Yeah, I mean, the Hagatna Restoration Redevelopment Authority, the only interaction that I've had with them in this term was when they came to the legislature to show us a demo for a virtual tour of old Hagatna. But again, just to reiterate some of the themes of this budget, where we're putting money towards Hagatna Restoration Redevelopment Authority, where I think anyone would be really hard pressed to justify $443,589, especially when we have, again, persons with disabilities who need job coaches. Just going back to DISID, and the only thing I've heard about HRA in the news recently was former executive director was taken to court and facing some very serious charges, which apparently he's not facing anymore because the victim was too scared to continue with the trial. So I hope this isn't one of the positions they're recruiting. I'm thinking about bringing this guy back, but I just don't see the justification for the Hagatna Restoration and Redevelopment Authority. And I would support any amendment that might come down later to at least give the $300,000 that DISID is asking for out of the Hagatna Restoration and Redevelopment Authority. Because let's be honest, we haven't seen any deliverables or results out of HRRA. And in fact, I'm looking at their website right now, and the last time their board met was in April of 2023. At least according to their website. So
I would need to verify, Senator, when was their last reporting of their expenditures? Yeah, I can verify.
okay. It's right there on the website if you guys want to Check that hra.guam.gov. So I don't know, I think a lot of, I mean, at least for me, I just don't see the justification, and I struggle to really grasp what the hell they've been doing at this agency.
Yeah, you're correct, Senator. We just went on the website and we're looking to see what's the latest report they have. They uploaded on the website, so we're kind of doing that now. Hopefully we can get the latest one, but yeah, that's the only access we have to get on there.
How are you able to tell us how much they're paying to the Department of Administration for rent? 'Cause I know they're located at Hessler, a little office with a couch and 2 classified employees.
Let me check. Yeah, their current appropriation for office rent, I believe, is $9,500. Now they're increasing it up to $15,500.
Who's increasing it, the big bad DOA landlord?
I'm not too sure, but that's the request they're reflecting on their budget. Oh, correction, it's 19, not 15, it's 19,500.
Wow. Per,
That's the amount required for FY25. So the increase is 11,000.
so their budget is increasing 11,000 over the last fiscal year? Or just the rent? Oh.
Over FY24, just for rent, is 11,000.
Did you go over the numbers? Yeah.
The total increase over FY24, Senator, is 34,000.
Yeah. I don't want to step on anyone's toes here, but, you know, I have some friends who work in the Hessler building, and just from their reports, this office is many days of the week empty. So, just like to state that for the record. And also support Senator Parkinson's comments, that I just don't see the justification for this. And I think as a body, if it comes down to paying rent for an office that many people say is empty most of the time, for an agency that hasn't even had a board meeting in over a year, I don't see the harm in defunding this agency, at least for the next year. And if it really is serving a purpose that is needed, then they can always use the ARP funds. But just for me personally, I would like to see this budget moved over to somewhere where it's definitely most needed. And I think funding services that directly affect and benefit the homeless or persons with disabilities, it's a no-brainer, really. Should be anyway. So, Cito Masi.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to? Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You know, I see our mutual comments with the Vice Speaker as well as the 2 previous speakers, because I think we're sort of facing a combination of both those perspectives with regards to Hagatna Restoration. The virtual tour of Hagatna actually was generated during the Calvo administration. We saw the plans that they had for the redevelopment of Hagatna. I mean, the museum is part of that. We had hoped to restore the old Governor's Palace. I mean, there was a lot of attention to trying to put a theme together here, even for existing businesses that could change the facade of their buildings to I guess, promote the Capitol in terms of our historic history and something that our residents and our visitors obviously could enjoy when they came down to the Capitol. And certainly the vision that was put together is pretty impressive when you look at it. You know, to incorporate even and improve the Chamorro village from what we have. Since then, however, I kind of concur. I mean, since Los Castile stepped down and they tried to, of course, they made the effort to get their plans through the legislature. We had some significant disagreements with portions of it. I haven't heard anything either. I don't know if any of my colleagues have ever been approached by them or what they're doing. Even though I think the agenda is important, I think it definitely will enhance and improve the Capitol. The vision has been there. Of course, that was all behind the intent of why it was created. I probably was part of, thinking back now, probably was part of one of the senators that actually voted for the creation of this organization 30 plus years ago. So I understand the value of it, but at the same time, I have to agree there's been a lack of presence. If they're busy working, I don't know about it. I don't know if any of my colleagues are aware. And I think that's the challenge they have. I don't know if it's something our members want to do through this budget or if, as Senator Parkinson mentioned, introduce a bill, because it certainly would force a public hearing so we can get some input as to where they are. I mean, maybe they're busy working, maybe they're MIA, I don't know. But I would have to say there's been, in the last couple of years, really, even publicly, I don't even hear of any public engagements with the media or if they're revising plans. If they were revising plans, you'd think they'd kind of knock on somebody's door here and say, hey, this is what we're recommending. Hopefully this will address the concerns the legislature previously had in not, approving our plan and moving it forward. Then at least we know they're busy bees and they're doing something. But I'd have to say from my standpoint in the legislature, there's been just a total void of presence of the Hagatna Restoration Group. And for those of us, and Vice Speaker remembers, we were part of the Hagatna Foundation that actually was able to receive federal funding to do the walking tour of Hagatna. Some of the upgrades and the signage that you currently see here was part of that, and we did that as a nonprofit organization. So, I mean, if we could do that on a part-time basis, contributing our time, certainly full-time work being done by this particular government entity, you would have hoped to have seen more with the Hagatna Restoration and Redevelopment Authority, but we've not, at least not I've not, and from the comments of my other colleagues, I think they have had a similar situation. So it's unfortunate because I think the desire and the vision behind this organization was pretty profound. And we've had some significantly important people that have contributed to sitting on the board, and perhaps still current. I don't know who the current board members are, but I think maybe if a public hearing were held, at least we could get a status on where they are with this organization. But again, that's up to the desire of the body. But I just wanted to relay those concerns because a lot has been done, but like I said, a lot of it was put together during the previous administration. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Madam Speaker?
Yeah, can you just, OFB, can you just help me here? So $400,000, even if the rent increases in 1 year from $9,000 to $19,000, that's $20,000. And then you said there's only 2 personnel and they have one more that they want to add. How do we get to 400,000 for 2 personnel? 443,000. And these are really not, this is, you said an administrative officer and a PC1?
Total personnel, Senator, is about $385,000. That includes, of course, the salary. It includes the increments due for the employees, the adjustment in retirement, and across the board. So the bottom line for personnel costs for the 4 positions is $385,000 plus dollars.
4 or 2?
385,000.
I thought you said there's 2 positions plus 1 coming on.
There's 2 positions currently on board filled, but we are funding 4 positions in their staffing pattern, which includes the executive director and a program coordinator 1 that the recruitment is in progress.
Okay. So we took out the director and the program But this budget is going up from last year. So we're saying last year we didn't fund an executive director?
Based on what we have in the staffing pattern, yes, we did. We did fund it last year.
We did, right? So
Yes.
why are you saying that that's,
Go back to the staff.
those are the two new? If there's only 2 employees right now, what's that funding level for those 2 current employees? Maybe that's my question, and the ones who are not filled yet, we can take that money, put it to DICIT or something.
The cost for FY24 staffing pattern is $343,000 for FY24, which includes the 4 positions fully funded. 2 of the 4 are filled. So we're still funding the positions.
Okay, so they have half lapses, right?
They have lapses, yes.
Yeah, it should be like the 2 unfilled positions for the entire fiscal year, including a executive director's position, which should have been the highest paid one,
If
right?
it stays vacant all year, yes.
Okay. So if we only want to, can we just fund the 2 positions that are filled with classified employees? They've been running this office for over a year now with an acting director. I think that that's adequate. At the very least, if they're going, you know, until, what would that be? For the 2 existing positions, not, I mean, the ones that are filled, not the ones that have been vacant for the entire year.
Just looking at rough numbers, it'll probably cost about $180,000.
Okay, so 180 plus 20,000 in rent, 200,000, right? Because,
Yes, the only thing with that right now is that vacant position for the program coordinator. That position is currently in progress to be filled. So
Yeah.
if we don't fund it in FY25, then that progress needs to stop.
yeah, I guess that's what I'm proposing, because they have an admin officer and they have a program coordinator, and they have an acting director. Yeah. So they really only need $200,000, even including their rent, $200,000 to maintain status quo FY24 to FY25. I don't think this is one of those agencies that we need to expand in FY25 when we can't fund beds for addiction recovery.
Aside from the $190,000 you would require to fund the 2 positions, you would also need about $55,000 to run the operation. In other words, to pay for the rental, the contractual obligation, and the supplies. Then you also have a few more, roughly about $2,400 to pay for utilities. So that's to keep
No,
the
the
office
utilities
going.
are in the rent.
Right now, the telephone, as it's shown here, is not included in the rent.
Telephone.
I'm assuming that because they're not requesting for power and water in FY25, and that the rent went up about $11,000, that the rent cost will now include the power and water, since they didn't request for it in 25.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, according, well, I looked at their MOU with DOA, and it says it covers the utilities, so this is in the same Hessler building as the public health, much smaller portion, of course. So I think if we can maintain this, I mean, some people had proposed to delete the whole thing, but I'd say at a very minimum, a compromise is continue those who are in place classified. But everything else, any potential growth of this agency, let's put that on hold and move that money towards one of those critical areas, either DICIT or the unfunded beds for recovery, addiction recovery. Yeah, and maybe this is an area where, the governor could also use her transfer authority if she needs to increase it. But we can fund the current bodies that are there, 200,000. So I would propose to amend this by striking 200,000.
And that'll be in the miscellaneous where we strike it, because there's no amendment here. Okay? So we can work on that on the later chapters. All right, Madam Speaker. Anyone else like to speak to this? Senator Blas, I apologize, Minority Leader. Every now and then I try not to look at my primo, but thank you, sir. Sir.
Yeah, that I noticed that selective vision. Okay, you know, I appreciate the conversation that we're having. Mr. Guerrero, I look back at the 2015 and 2016 budgets. And first off, how long has this HRA office been in existence? Or the function?
From what I gather, Senator, the references as being in existence, I think, for 27 years.
27 years.
That's my assumption, based on the conversation that's been made, yes.
Where was it in existence prior to 2017? Because the reason why I'm asking, I went through the 2015 and the 2016 budgets, and there's no entry there for HRA.
Senator, I would have to go back to the archives to get that information right now.
Well, yeah, and to my point, okay? Was there a possibility that this function actually existed in another agency such as either Bureau of Statistics and Plans or the Department of Land Management? Because it didn't exist prior to, there was no budget allocation prior to 2017.
Senator, I wouldn't know. I mean, we're talking about 27 years ago. The only thing I can say is that the whole creation of the Hagatna Restoration Project was basically to upgrade the Ganya area.
I appreciate
with
it.
Cultural, you know, cultural buildings. I mean, I even saw there's a plan that was put out that even showed a river going around.
Yeah, I know, because I
Ganya.
was the author for that river.
Yeah, so I'm not too sure exactly what the thought and theory was when they first created this, and whether or not that even existed prior to the actual establishment of the department 27 years ago.
Okay, and I bring this to the point where, okay, I don't think that us not funding this here says that the function is not going to continue to exist. It existed somewhere in this government prior to 2016 or prior to 2017. Okay, and it got to the point where when the previous administration rolled out the plan, the master plan, of which, by the way, continues to be the plan that, at least the last time I saw it, the plan that they're espousing, no amendments or no alterations to it. And so, you know, with the speaker's proposal or idea of being able to fund this by $200,000, I can see where this agency or the functions of this authority can actually go back under Bureau of Statistics and Plans as a function there. How much did they get last year?
Total amount that they're requesting for FY25 is 300.
No, how much did they get last year?
Oh, last year. $409,496.
How much do they have left?
Last year.
How much do they have left?
That was last year's budget.
Yeah, last year.
Yes.
So right now, based on what their expenditures and everything, how much would they anticipatorily lapse from last year's budget?
I don't have that information with me right at the moment, but I'm sure I can probably find out.
And I think if we do some DI math here, if we only funded, we funded 4 positions, they only carry 2. And then you gave them how much did you, I'm sorry, how much did you gave them 409,000 last year?
409.
409. So if you gave them 409 and they only funded 2 positions because they haven't funded the other 2 positions, it's still there. At 190 for, the 2 positions, let's take 409 and let's subtract 200,000. That's $200,000 in lapses that exist. That should be able to be there. Right?
Assuming that the positions remain vacant for the entire year, there's a possibility you can generate about $200,000 in lapses, yes.
So the $200,000 there and the $200,000 reduction in here really will not phase the operations.
If what I'm hearing correctly, the proposal is to fund the 2 warm bodies on board. That's about $190,000 for the year.
Right.
They would also need, again, additional maybe 55, maybe 65,000, no, 55, about $58,000 to run the operation of the agency. Anything other than that, you minus that total amount from the amount that we're appropriating here, 443, you might come out about, I would say, $160,000, $70,000.
Why you need $58,000 for an operation that hasn't done anything in the last year, 2 years?
Well, regardless if there's 1 person or 10 people, you need to pay the rent. That's one thing.
Okay, so
Utilities, the phone is, I believe, $2,500. So that's a fixed cost. You need to pay for that. Then you got contractual services obligations that, once you.
do they have any contractual service obligations that they've expended?
I'm sorry?
Are there any contractual services or obligations that they've expended in this current fiscal year?
Normally, contractual obligations is what you commit in the beginning of the fiscal year, and you
Yes.
utilize that all through year.
Are you aware of any contractual obligations or
Currently, in the current budget?
currently?
I can check, hang on.
Thank you.
What I showed here, Senator, they have a expenditure level of 11.8 million that they spent in FY23. They have an appropriation of 52 million for contractual in FY24, but the level they're requesting for in FY25 dropped down to 21,000.
Can you repeat that?
In FY23, the actual expenditure based on their budget request was 11,800. What was budgeted for construction in FY24 was 52,000. But the request in FY25 now is only for 21,000. So they actually reduced the contractual requirements by almost half.
Okay. So I think if we sit down, we crunch the numbers, and then again, there is the possibility of, first off, they don't need their lapses, obviously. Okay? And they can run an operations with half the funding that's requested here. So even if you take the low numbers of both sides, $170,000 each year, comes up to $340,000 of money that can be utilized to be able to address a need, that was previously spoken. And I say this because, first off, with a budget this big, and we can't figure out how we can address the needs because it's been it's been swallowed up by a lot of wants. And here's an opportunity to continue an operation. Actually, it's not going to take away from this operation. If it's anything to sustain it, and then bring it back to an agency or bring it back into a fold and to an agency that at one point in time had the responsibility of it prior to being separated in 2017, it's not going to hurt anybody. Okay? And so, I'm just interested to hear the rest of the discussions and stuff. But I think right there is $340,000. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Minority Leader Senator Blas. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on Hagatna Restoration? I see none, so we're going to go ahead and close this chapter. The chapter has been closed. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Section GG is closed. Hagatna Restoration and Development Authority. Again, closed. Okay. We are now on page 95. The Commission. And there was an increase to the Commission by $236,929. OFB, can you please explain why this was increased and where is it going to?
The increase is attributed to personnel costs, contractual obligations, and supplies.
Yeah, 236,929. Is there any questions for the Commission on page 95? Any questions? Okay.
What do you mean by contractual? What is that for?
Contractual obligations for the agencies will consist of items such as the Xerox machines, Commission website, the procurement model for training staff, part of the printing services, Chamorro expert, Chamorro interns, community outreach and training, genealogy workshop, indigenous, I believe it's a summit they want to hold, and then I believe partnerships.
And what is the personnel? So what's the change in personnel?
On the personnel, there's an increase of 226,000.
Steve, can you explain that, what that means, please?
The increase represents, of course, organic growth and retirement benefits. It also includes the funding of 4 positions in FY25, new positions.
And just for my colleagues, the request from the governor's request was 549,000 for the Commission, 546 for the Commission was the governor's request. Speaker, do you have any more questions? Anyone have any more questions?
Yeah, just what was the increase above the governor's request? 180,000.
Yes, that was the governor's request. Compared to FY24?
Yeah, no, OFB increased it, the governor's request.
Yes.
Yeah, and they gave them
Yes.
180,000 more. I'm just asking why.
The amount that we increased over the governor's request was about 180,000. It's for the 4 new positions that they're requesting for.
But did they explain why that's not included in the governor's request? I mean, and the governor gave, can you just explain how are we doing this? You told us you're sticking to the governor's ceiling on most of these agencies, but I don't mind going up, but just tell me why, how did that happen versus the other agencies?
Like I explained earlier, when we go through the process of coming up with these levels, we take the governor's request what's in the governor's executive budget, and we use that as a basis going forward. But we also meet with the agencies, or we contact the agencies and ask them, is there anything else that you guys need that we can help you with? And I think one of the things that the Commission asked us is if they could add additional funding for these 4 new positions. So we did accommodate the funding for these 4 new positions.
Okay. The Commission does great work, so I understand that, but my issue is, so why when we asked about behavioral health, you had also assured them you're going to give them what they had asked for, but we didn't. DISIT, the same thing, and so I'm just trying to figure out, how come some people are getting what they ask and these other agencies are not? Customs, the hospital. But I have no objection to this. I just want to know from OFB how are we supposed to follow this?
Again, Senator, like I said, when we consult with the agencies and departments, on basically what their needs are, we try to do the best we can to accommodate them to the point where whatever we appropriate to them is something I think that we can manage on the general fund side as we distribute the general funds, and of course what the departments can normally utilize and operate with. So there are some agencies, of course, that we're asking in the millions. We could not address that, but we try to help them as much as possible. The smaller agencies, when they were asking, if you can fund this and that, we looked at it and we said, and just like you, there's others that we did not fund at all, and we just felt that this is one area that we felt that was warranted and was justified, and these positions actually are people already on board. They're warm bodies, so we kind of funded these positions for the FY25 budget.
They are already warm bodies? You're saying they are already warm bodies?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
Speaker, are you concluded? Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Senator Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I mean, I don't think we argue about the mission of this particular commission and the importance that they, of the work that they do. But, this budget process is confusing me as we go along. And I probably, maybe except for Senator Tina, probably gone through more government of Guam budgets than anybody else in the room. I didn't realize I would be more effective not being a senator, and I could just simply have my interests and go to the budget committee and tell them what I want, and then they provide it for me in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then we are left as elected officials of the people of Guam having to get hopefully no objection or at least 8 votes to extract what has been put in this budget. And right now the theme seems to be, let's just keep growing the government of Guam. Including all the ARP-funded positions that the administration put in place without reservation, without input, because we have no say. And then again, now we are being presented with a budget where they're included in the budget and we have no say. It's mind-boggling because, looking at the figures that, our good colleague Senator Blas provided the other day, we have grown the government of Guam over the last 6 years close to over $400 million. And I've been around long enough to remember the days when we were debating the annual budget for the entire government of Guam. Were we going to, was the ceiling going to be $450 million? Was it going to be 500? Was it going to be 525 million? Let's wrestle those numbers. So colleagues, I'm dumbfounded by this. If I was new and didn't know any better, I guess I'd just cruise along. But I'm curious because I'm already seeing, Madam Chair, the cracks in the financing. If we cannot fund what we think and say is the most critical needs in our community, and we're cutting certain areas, and yet other areas, well, it would be nice to have the additional positions, we're funding those positions. It's all about the hiring and the contracts. Somewhere along the way, I think we kind of forgot, where's the people of Guam in all of these deals? So I really have reservation of hearing this inconsistency because we are here now, trying to hope we can fund the things that are important to us. I'm even more dismayed that oversight chairs are having to ask questions of the budget committee because it doesn't appear in some cases that engagement and dialogue occurred, that oversight chairs have some comfort level with what's being proposed for their oversights. That is even more mind-boggling. It's almost like we have to come here and say, oh, I'm oversight chair of so-and-so, and it's only here that I'm finding out what's been approved or disapproved for my oversight. I'll tell you, I've been an oversight chair. We wouldn't be having this discussion here. And some of these oversights are getting things in their oversight that they don't even want. And I guess they don't have a choice. This is very strange budgeting for me, I have to tell you. I'm dumbfounded by it. I mean, I could object to make a motion, but then I'm going to be told, oh, you don't have an amendment to not fund those new positions and take that money and put it for DICIT or the areas of rehabilitation for additional beds for those in our community that are suffering from drug addiction. So am I able to make that? Because I don't have it in front of me here.
I believe,
Madam
Senator
Chair.
Brown, that we may be able to, because I believe there's something else earlier that we are going to bookmark. We were told that we can make those changes in another area of the bill in future chapters. So please keep that in mind. So
okay, and I will propose it simply. I mean, it's not anything against the commission. As I said, they have a very important mission.
Okay.
But this type of budgeting right now, where I'm already, like I said, the cracks are here already. All the money falling from the sky is starting to slow down. We're getting a little sprinkle now. Mm-hmm. And we have grown. Well, I've not supported the budget, so I can't say I personally have grown, but the body has grown. The government of Guam budget to a substantial level. That my concern in all of this, and I hate to have to bring this up, but it's sustainability. And when we're adding on things that we collectively, and even our community will say, if we're going to measure, everything's important, but if we're going to measure the most critical priorities that we are aware over the last few days, we are not funding to the level of need that is already there. As in the case of DISIT, I understand that the next person that was in line for services was waiting so long, you know, that this individual passed away. And so that's how the slot opened up, because the next one in line, after waiting for such a long time, passed away. And DISIT was not able to provide assistance to that individual. I mean, if that's not critical, I don't know what is. So I appreciate the information. I will take note of that, but I'm a little concerned because there's a lot of hidden things in this budget that if we don't ask, we're simply not informed about. New additional positions we keep adding and adding and adding. And for me, if you're a GovGuam employee right now, I would think that you would want to ensure that the money you're earning now, you want to be able to keep. Because people make long-term commitments and obligations, be it a house mortgage, being, you know, purchasing a new car for the family. Maybe they're saying, hey, after all these years in COVID, we need a family vacation, whatever the case may be, that they determine their financial priorities. You want to, you know, ensure you're going to be able to keep your job. But for those of us that have been through times of austerity, including this body that took a substantial 30% pay cut. So for colleagues, if you think you're barely making it on 55 minus your taxes and your retirement contribution, I remember calculating it. It took me $32,000 or about $31,000 a year. Four-day work weeks. I mean, the list goes on. I just think we need to be a lot more responsible with how we are spending the people's money. Because I'll tell you, if it's your own money, I don't think you're so casual. But I don't like the hidden traps that have been presented to us, that if we don't ask, we don't know, to explain why we've seen, you know, these by $100,000, almost $200,000. And yet, like I said, critical needs in the government we're not funding. If we could fund that, then maybe this would not be an issue, and I'd say, hey, sure, whatever, let's do it. But again, doesn't make a lot of sense. So I appreciate the information. I will take note of that, but I would like to know moving forward if there are any additional new positions that are being funded in this budget, or expectations being funded in this budget that we're unaware of. Because I'd like to know. I think the people of Guam would like to know what we're adding on for their future obligations. So with that, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to comment on this section.
You're very welcome, Senator Brown. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on page 95, letter HH? Anyone? Okay, no other people. We are closing this chapter. HH has been closed on page 95. We are now moving to II, which is the Office of Technology, which is on page 96. And with the Office of Technology, there was an increase of $224,888. I'll ask OFB to explain why it was increased and where this money went to.
Of the 224,000 increase, there was a shift basically in how they fund their operational costs. They had an increase in personnel. Yeah, they had an increase in personnel of I believe 897,000. They had a decrease in their contractual obligations of 661,000. They decreased their capital outlay. They totally zeroed out what they had appropriated in FY24. And then we have an increase in utilities. That represents the net of 224,000 increase.
Okay. Are there any questions on the Office of Technology? No questions? Okay, I'm closing this chapter. Chapter II, page 96 is closed. Oh, section II. Chapter II. Okay, section. I know it's getting close, you guys. But let's try and finish a couple more before we break. So again, section II is closed, page 96. Moving on to JJ, the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Okay, this is on page 97, and the increase was $82,789 to the Women's Bureau. Anybody have any questions? Or OFB, can you explain why the Women's Bureau received additional $82,789? And where did it go?
The increase is attributed to, I believe, the program coordinator position, which is currently, the recruitment is in progress. And you have an increase in 35,000 in operation and about 2,300 in utility costs. Pardon? That's the Bureau of Women's Affairs, yes. Yeah, no, I don't think they're at Adelup anymore. I think they have a, I think they relocated. I don't think they're at Adelup anymore. Still there? Are they still there, Lavelle? Yeah, Senator, based on their website, they're still located at the Governor's Complex in Adelup, but I got information they're actually over the GCIC building. And I believe they're probably housed under the Department of Labor.
Okay, so anybody have any more questions? Okay. Minority Leader, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Guerrero, you stated that the 75,000 or the increase in their budget.
I'm sorry, that was 82,789.
It's for,
That is the total. It comprises of increases in personnel, contractual services, office rent, and utilities.
okay, but part of that was going to go towards a program coordinator position
That's correct.
that is currently being in the process of being filled.
That's correct.
How do you fill a position when there's no funding for the position when you're announcing it?
In the current FY24, Senator, there shows there's 2 positions within the Bureau of Women's Affairs. And the one position other than the director is the PC coordinator that's being recruited, and that is being done in progress.
Do they have the funding currently to be able to fill that position?
Currently in the FY24 budget, it is showing there is funding for the position, but the amount that is showing, I'm assuming, is only half the cost of the position. That would be, at this point in time, would be okay to allocate it that way simply because, as we speak, there's only 2 months left in the fiscal year. So you would only require 2 months' worth of funding for that position in this fiscal year. Going forward in FY25, you would have to fund the entire amount for the whole year.
What happens if they don't get that entire amount? What happens if they don't get that amount? What happens to that position come October 1st?
Remember, whatever is showing the staffing pattern is what we funded going into FY25. So if they don't get that funding for that position, then we're not funding the position in FY25. But all of B funded the position, and that's why it's in the budget.
So that position right now, there's a warm body there.
From what I gather right now, the position is being the recruitment is in progress for the position. And this was done, I think, about a month or 2 ago. We can probably find out whether or not it's filled with a warm body as we speak today, but I don't know that as we speak.
So I know the whole idea of if there's a warm body there, then yes, then we're going to need to fill it for the next one because it's a warm body there. But if there's no warm body there, or in this process.
Yeah, you know, Senator, when we were speaking with the departments, and again, we had to gauge a cutoff date on what we considered as vacant and what we considered as filled positions. The instruction I gave my staff is I told them to reach out to the departments and find out where in the process are you in filling these vacant positions. And I told them, I says, I believe it was I believe it was something like June or July. I told them that if the positions weren't filled by then, we were going to consider them vacant positions. If they prove to us that there is an interview, they have people lined up, there's a list at DOA that it's just a matter of the process to get it through, then we would accept that as those positions being filled. But we just had to, at some point, put a cutoff so we can figure out whether or not we want to fund these positions and how do we classify these positions as either filled or vacant.
Okay, so at the cutoff date of June, that position hadn't been filled.
At this point, sir, I'm not sure. See, that's why I need to find out.
Okay, I mean, again, I understand the need to be able to fund a position that currently exists. But not just in this agency, but in previous agencies, just listening to the conversation that they want to be able to build the warm, they want this for new positions. I'm just wondering, okay, I think in the last 2 hours, I've heard that this government has grown by at least another 20, 30 employees. And I'm still trying to, in that growth, how better is the service to be provided to the community? how is that improved? I know that's not your, okay, I'm thinking out loud here so that I can help to wrap my arms as to whether or not, we can accept that this is happening. I can't. No fault to you, to you all. You've given them, the timelines, okay, of when you can consider this way or that way. But it's just amazing how this government, brings on new people and institutes new raises, and the only thing you see in as far as progress with the government is the budget is progressively going up. There's no correlation to better government service in these areas. That's not up for you to be able to defend. But that's something that we as a body have got to consider. And if there's no direct correlation between an increase in costs with an increase in performance or an enhancement of a performance, what are we spending our money on? And maybe that's a discussion that we need to have after, the budget's okay. How do we measure whether or not the people of Guam, the taxpayers of Guam, that their money is being utilized as best, or is we just funding positions, creating positions and then funding positions just for the sake of filling positions and giving people jobs? I know a lot of private sector businesses that would love that opportunity, but they can't because they have to pay their taxes so the government can do what it's doing. Thanks. Thanks, Mrs. Madam Chair.
You're very welcome and make some very good points, Minority Leader Senator Blas, because, I was a director of the Women's Bureau, and I know that Department of Labor covered the rent because they received opportunities for federal grants, as well as, it was a one-woman show there, and now it seems to be growing. My colleagues, it's already 5 after 5. We're going to recess until 8:30 tomorrow morning, and we will be leaving off same at the Women's Bureau in case anybody has any questions. We'll start back on page 97, Section JJ of the budget bill for FY25. So create a great evening. Please drive safely. See you tomorrow, 8:30 in the morning.